Good evening, everyone, and welcome to our Elevate 2025 AI and Engineering Excellence. This is a very special talk because we have people from all over the world connected to hear from Gap Talent. Today, we have Sergio Morales, who will be talking about spotting AI gold, a very special topic to see how we communicate that with the client and turning curiosity into client solutions. First, I'd like to give you a brief overview of our company. Gap, as we commonly call it, is a strategic technology solution company that delivers exceptional expertise in digital transformation, software, and data solutions through our world-class consulting and engineering teams. Also, at Gap, we make AI happen, helping companies across industries harness the power of intelligent automation, predictive analytics, and machine learning to drive measurable success. Also, let me tell you a little bit about Sergio. Sergio is a data engineer who has been working at Gap for over 12 years. He is currently a data and AI subject matter expert, and for the past year has been meeting with clients to discuss AI capabilities, what different companies are looking for in AI, and how to identify and prioritize use cases to kickstart productive AI engagement. So as you can see, both the company and the speaker are very much aware of the importance of AI in today's landscape. So without further ado, Sergio, the stage is all yours.
Thank you so much. Can you confirm my audio is coming through okay?
Yeah, we can hear you.
All right, perfect. Well, thank you everyone for joining on this talk. The subject of this presentation, as Camilo just said, is Spotting AI Gold, Turning Curiosity into Client Solutions. As he also mentioned, thank you for that introduction. My name is Sergio Morales. I have been with Gap for more than 10 years now. I started out as a software developer, but for the past 7 years or so, I've been involved with data and AI initiatives, mostly pertaining in my role as a contributor to the Center of Excellence of Data and Analytics within Gap. I'm currently a principal data engineer and a tech lead for one of our biggest data science and engineering accounts. And for the past couple of years, in my capacity as a data and AI subject matter expert, I have found myself having a lot of conversations with clients about AI, all of which are at different points in their data journey, from having an awareness of AI's capabilities, but requiring guidance on where to start integrating AI into their organization or services in a way that yields value quickly and aligns with business goals, to clients who have a very clear and robust idea of what it is they want to accomplish, but still require some guidance on implementation and resources. That's actually where the idea for this talk was born. It was initially meant to be a conversation in which I could share some of my learnings and observations around these exploratory and discovery conversations I've had with clients surrounding identifying potential AI use cases. And the intent behind that was demystifying some of the complexity around this process and encouraging other engineers, especially within Gap, to perform their own discovery processes and be able to pick up and act on these opportunities confidently. Especially as Gap's company-wide expertise around AI grows, this is going to become even more relevant. So I'm going to try and keep that original spirit. It's going to be a conversation, a one-sided conversation, but a conversation nonetheless. And I'll walk you through what I have in store for you today. So our first point is going to be about building the foundation for AI. This is very much an engineering talk, and one of the main takeaways you're going to get from me is how no matter the nature of your project, whether it is a regular software development project or an AI project, it is going to require good engineering and good foundations. So that's what we're going to be talking first today. Afterwards, I'm going to be sharing some of my learnings from conducting exploratory meetings, as I have just said, what questions to ask, what to focus on, what to communicate, and how to uncover what are those optimal cases to focus on, especially when pitching ideas and engagements to clients who are starting out on their AI journey. And finally, I'm going to be talking about how to pitch these ideas and how to present them in a way that is parsable and understandable and does not intimidate clients who come into this area. So let's begin with our first section, which is all about building the foundation for AI. Oh, and I should probably mention, we're going to have a space for questions at the end of the presentation, so feel free to submit your questions throughout. I will be reminding you after each big section to write them so you don't forget. So let's begin with building the foundation for AI. Why great AI starts with great data engineering. This sort of chart that I have here, the pyramid to the right, to the left, should be familiar to anyone in the data space in the last decade. And even not that just the data space, but any software development kind of space. Data is a foundation, not only the technology that surrounds it, but the governance policies, the understanding of how to manage it, the cultural attitudes towards leveraging it within the organization, all these things are going to dictate how impactful and effective the usage of said data will be. Robust organizations probably already have a notion of how to use data. I imagine very few software development endeavors in general can be undertaken without a degree of having a data culture or a minimal degree of data organization. And that is one of my main takeaways in this presentation, and you're going to hear me hammer this over and over throughout it. Despite there being important new considerations when it comes to Gen AI and LLMs and AI in general, such as the kind of data that goes into it, the core of what makes good engineering is still as useful as ever. You're going to need the cultural buy-in, you need the infrastructure to facilitate its access and flow throughout different operative and analytical planes of data within the organization, and that will take you much of the way towards a successful project. Now, that said, and another big takeaway that I want you to take from this presentation is the need for a data culture and infrastructure doesn't have to be an obstacle. So innovation does not require months of investment or governance setup and infrastructure. Big projects focused on overhauling critical business processes or doing huge integrations probably will necessitate some degree of ready infrastructure. However, AI and its flexibility and the number of AI tools in the market means there's so many ways of getting your foot in the door when it comes to AI, that these requirements are only requirements to big ambitious projects. There's probably a way to get your foot in the door when it comes to AI, and it will help you acclimate you to the space and set the stage for more ambitious projects further down the line. So when it comes to how to start integrating AI into an organization, I like to make a distinction between AI services and tools that can be used to enhance internal processes, such as development, testing, or even administrative tasks, and integrating AI in a way that impacts business critical processes through actual software development. These on the screen now are examples of that first group, from AI coding assistants that can be easily integrated into existing workflows or IDEs to specialized AI generating testing or documentation tools. These sorts of tools have become evidently very popular in the past year or so and have reached a level of maturity that makes them generally reliable, especially those from well-known providers like Microsoft or OpenAI. And they are a pretty good way for companies to start engaging with AI while still being mindful of basic security procedures, not disclosing confidential information and tools that don't necessarily guarantee that said information won't be fed back somehow to the training process. But it is still a pretty good starting point and requires very little effort in terms of infrastructural integration. The ease with which they can be implemented, however, which often amounts to paying a license and maybe installing a plugin, shouldn't be mistaken for a guarantee of success. Companies may still encounter cultural challenges in the adoption of these tools, and tracking the effectiveness of said adoption can be hard. That's where we have some experience stepping in and offering help based on our own experiences from adopting these tools. And I myself have been surprised of how willing clients are to get help and feedback on the usage of these tools, since they can be deceptively hard to make the most of. Now, on the other end of the spectrum, when it comes to adding AI to existing services and other business critical processes that relate to a company's operational plane and data, these implementations will probably fall anywhere in the spectrum between being low complexity efforts mostly because they will align with existing templates or proofs of concepts that we have, things that LLMs lend themselves to do out of the box without much modification, such as summarizing text, answering questions, generating translated text, and things like that, and more specialized use cases on the other end of the spectrum, targeted towards specific needs with a high degree of integration requirements. Regardless, whether this is a very simple project that, again, fits very well within an LLM or a generative AI tool capabilities, or if it is a big, robust AI solution with lots of integration with the client's environment or infrastructure, one of the big takeaways, and there's plenty of big takeaways I want you to leave with, is a robust AI solution will always be a combination of both AI components and other technologies. And these other technologies are going to include deterministic data processes, ETL pipelines, orchestration tools, cloud services. And what's going to drive success will be how well integrated these are collectively, rather than the effectivity of the AI component alone. So this demands a capacity for good engineering, solution design, and the correct deployment of design patterns, which is great news for us because we're already experts at that as software engineers. A AI component alone will hardly be a full solution, or will hardly represent the entirety of what solves a client's problem. We have here some examples for data engagements, all of which I actually took from presentations I have prepared for clients, looking to talk about gaps data and AI capabilities. It is worth noting that some of these, such as predictive modeling up top and the pipeline automation item under the AI chatbots one, the third one, are not necessarily utilizing AI services directly. That's something we have been doing at Gap since the beginning of our data practice, and would be considered more data analytics or data science in a classic sense. But they may still emerge out of an exploratory conversation with a client who's initially looking to learn about AI capabilities, just because of the adjacency between these two fields. Presenting a combination of previous experiences, development templates, and proof of concepts that we have worked on, and are even prepared to demonstrate, not only establish the breadth of our expertise, but also hopefully helps the client start formulating connections with their own needs. There's a balance to be struck when having these conversations between basically presenting a menu and making the client responsible for creating those connections, and on the other hand, being proactive about identifying potential use cases ourselves. But it's still good, I feel, to see if anything arises out of the showcases, even if we've done our homework and came up with potential pitches ourselves. While the cases in the left are a bit generic, which is helpful because then we can have templates that accelerate our efforts if a client is interested in them, it's just as important to leverage more specific experiences. The semantic data merging and the agentic trip planner on the right are good examples of cases we can talk about in depth. And in the case of the planner, it is actually a proof of concept we can showcase that demonstrates our capabilities in agentic AI, which is becoming quite trendy in terms of solution design for AI applications. You'll hear me hammer this point over and over during this presentation, and I already have. But engineering-wise, there's very little difference between the foundations of a solid software engineering project and a data or even a Gen AI project. This is important because we should think about AI projects as requiring the same degree of architectural and engineering rigorosity as any other software engineering project. We're not just connecting an AI black box to a client's infrastructure and calling it a day. First, we have to validate the foundations required for the use case that we have in mind. Does the company already have an internal data practice or infrastructure that we have visibility on? How can we best utilize those existing resources? Or how can we set up a sustainable environment to support these upcoming efforts, not just in the short term, but looking ahead towards more complex data engagements? Always keep the focus on business needs and profitability, like you would on any, again, regular software development project. On the one hand, we're not looking to shoehorn AI into a client's processes just for the sake of it, but on the other, like I already mentioned, there's enough flexibility in AI and there are so many tools out there that it is very likely that it can enhance or speed up key parts of their workflow or help alleviate a pain point. We just have to be smart about what that is and the best way to figure it out. Again, right? Foundations of a solid software engineering project and the data project is going to be pretty much the same as those who require a degree of architectural rigorosity as any other software engineering project. I think I was on the third point. So for that third point on the design of ecosystem of modular components, I think there's a two-way rationale behind the third point of building this modularity. A deliberately modular design is going to keep things manageable and help draw the line I mentioned between a vague AI black box and an engineered solution. Well-designed components and pipelines can keep them reusable and recyclable, which is especially key if we're looking to start small in order to expand or diversify in terms of AI projects and integrations further down the line. Components can also be stepping stones towards more complex engagements in the future, and keeping things modular and well organized is going to give us a head start during those future engagements. Regarding the last point in what to avoid, because I'm not going to belabor the rest of the points too much. Uh, Key promoters of AI within a company won't necessarily have the say to embark on a months-long project and require to get some degree of buy-in and value demonstration to even start a small AI project. So keeping work well scoped and demonstrable, especially at the beginning, can make sure that we get that buy-in and pave the way for future projects and engagements. So before I move on to the second part of the presentation, I would remind everyone to, if you have questions, write them on the Q&A section of the chat so that we can tackle them later. For this second part, I'm going to be talking about the experiences and learnings I've had from these exploratory meetings, where I am often having to interact with clients that I have never known of before, in which my goal is to showcase GAP's AI capabilities as well as identify potential use cases for implementation within their organization. Some of these conversations I think is worth noting. I haven't had directly with clients, but with Gapsters instead, who are looking to reach out and put our foot in the door for potential AI projects with our clients. So, as I've mentioned a couple of times, keep things focused on an organization's immediate needs and avoid attempting to shoehorn AI into places that don't intuitively seem like good fits for it. This is especially important for me as someone who many times has had little contact with the clients I interact with. And understanding their immediate interests is then key to figuring out where best to start spending our attention. We have to leverage organizational knowledge bases and backlogs, which is the second point you see to the top right. Something I very quickly learned is there might be an innovation team in place, a data team with a good intuition for what a good AI use case may be, or just backlog items that had been left by the wayside because they seemed unfeasible at the time um, that they were evaluated that could now deserve a second look based on current AI capabilities. Organizations know their own needs, and sometimes they're well documented. Making sure we align with those needs and are not doubling efforts or connecting with whom we should be can accelerate the process of coming up with useful proposals that will resonate with our client. Working iteratively, the third point, will also avoid many potential headaches. Try not to get bogged down in details, but try to see if there's a proof of concept or prototype we could quickly build or even already have to demonstrate value and use that as a platform for a conversation. And finally, decomposing bigger problems into smaller chunks is just an essential part of solution design. And like I mentioned, makes it easier to define, scope, and control an AI project, even if it could be initially thought of as just a prompt for an LLM. I've encountered many initial projects that are basically just an LLM with a prompt, and it could be so much more manageable and understandable if we were able to break that down into an actual pipeline, into an actual architecture. Can a big problem, such as automating an entire process, be broken down into individual parts with specialized AI components taking care of each? As I mentioned, that's going to be much easier to test, manage, and improve upon instead of attempting to manage it all as a single AI thing or a single prompt. Here's the key areas that I like to ask about on these exploratory conversations. In light of what I've said so far, many of these are going to seem obvious and just a restatement of what I've said, but I think they're still worth going through. So first, identify the current interests of the organization by asking about their key services, whether they already have a data practice in place, like I mentioned, whether they have any experience with AI or a data culture or any sort of governance structure in place. And finally, like I said, documents such as backlogs or brainstorming notes can be very helpful to identify where their intuition lies already in terms of where AI might be a good fit for them. Next comes the second piece of the pyramid, which I showed all the way back on the first slide. The existing data sources and infrastructure. At this stage, especially when I'm having initial talks with a client, this is much more about that first part, which is identifying what data they have and how it is currently being utilized. There's two useful data taxonomies that I like to apply here. The first one is the split between operational and analytical data. Operational data is that which is actively being used to directly run the organization and are actively serving end users. While analytical data refers to data that has come out of that cycle and has been archived mostly for analytics purposes, building reports, analyzing past performance to strategize and take decisions, etc. This last part is usually what gets used as the basis for business intelligence processes. The second taxonomy that I think is useful to apply to data is the distinction between structured and unstructured data. The structured data, as most of you might already know about, refers to data that has a standardized format and can probably be read with ease through deterministic means, SQL tables, JSON and YAML files, payloads coming from API endpoints, etc. This data usually better lends itself to deterministic processes, classic machine learning, data analysis, etc. Through it can definitely enhance generative AI or LLM components if used well. Unstructured data, on the other hand, refers to data that is harder to analyze in a homogeneous or well-structured manner, natural language, voice recordings, pictures, etc. AI components lend themselves well to processing it, so this is a good clue of what resources we have that may not be being utilized to their fullest extent. And the companies often find themselves with lots of these kinds of data without really using them in any useful manner that lends itself towards better strategizing or decision making. Finally, we have to ask and identify where the decision bottlenecks lie. What pain points exist within the organization that relate to both its goals and the data that they have at hand? Hopefully, the previous discussions, the previous points on business needs and existing data sources will have brought to front of mind some of the biggest places people get stuck or the biggest time sinks where AI may have the biggest impact. Dealing with support tickets, generating content or suggestion to display to users, etc. All of this could turn out to be a great first use case to tackle. This that I'm showing now is a simple template that anyone I think could use as a starting point to conduct an exploratory review of potential AI use cases, following what I talked about in the previous slide. Start by making sure you have a clear understanding of what the company's services are meant to be used for. Follow that by listing out the data sources that you have visibility of. Under structured data, list data that you know is stored in a regular, predictable format, such as user data, usage metrics, inventories, etc. And under non-structured data, try to think of what sort of data they may have that doesn't follow a standard format or requires natural language to understand. Things like thought leadership content, such as blog posts, for example, could turn out to be very useful. Knowledge bases that they have internally or externally to users as support mechanisms, promotional videos, technical support tickets, or even customer feedback or customer conversations with support agents. Any sort of documents with human written content that make it through the operational plane, all of these may connect back to the organization's purpose in a way that suggests use case to propose. And finally, try to get a sense for the level of interest regarding the integration of AI into internal processes, be they development, QA, or something else, such as administrative tasks or HR processes, versus use cases that may involve actual development of components to be integrated into the service offerings. I've used a template very much like this one before. It just has a couple more things, especially one talking to Gapsters looking to present something to their clients. And every time it's led to thinking about use cases that had been overlooked in the past or maybe hadn't been as apparent, despite how simple this template may seem. As I mentioned a couple of slides back now, it is not uncommon for there to be interests in identifying what we would call quick wins or low-hanging fruit. AI use cases that won't require an extraordinary amount of resources and time to at least have something to showcase or demonstrate value. This allows an organization to gain momentum in their AI journey and gain buy-in to tackle bigger projects or perform infrastructure work later that won't be as immediately attractive as a shiny demo would be. So identifying these use cases can be very useful. One of my favorite sources of inspiration comes from the Hugging Face platform, and it is actually what I'm showing right now. This is a list of what they call tasks, which are specific verbs that the models they help host can tag themselves with as being designed to do. And this connects directly to the methods that they expose through their APIs and libraries on several programming languages, making it very easy to turn these models into working components with with a lot of ease. People, I feel, already have a good intuition of what LLMs can do in terms of text generation. Answering questions, summarizing or explaining content, translating text. And we can think of these sorts of tasks as taking natural language as inputs and outputting natural language as well, which make them hard to work with unless you are passing it off to another LLM. However, there are other tasks that LLMs lend themselves to do that also involve parsing natural language, but they output more structured responses, such as measuring the similarity between two sentences or classifying inputs into one of a very specific number of options. And these use cases can be often overlooked, but they can serve as building blocks for the pipelines I was referring to before, in which distinct AI components with more specific, simple objectives are orchestrated to solve a more complex problem. So the takeaway from this slide goes two ways for me. On the surface, it's just good to know what immediate use cases there are for models on platforms like these. If you can connect a client need to one of these right away, to one of these boxes, it's likely that will help you net an early success and it's going to point into a very good direction. If, on the other hand, you go one step further and are able to decompose a seemingly more complex problem into a more orchestrated solution that involves several of these verbs or tasks, that may lead to making a problem seem much more manageable than it seemed to be before. We're reaching the end of the presentation as we move on to the last part. So I will remind you to, if you have any questions, feel free to write them on the box thing to do so. So next I'm going to be talking about pitching AI opportunities. This is going to reflect many of the things that we have talked about, but through the lens of presenting an opportunity to a client. So in this slide, you'll see many of our key lessons from previous sections, as I just mentioned. First, don't sabotage yourself or shoot yourself in the foot by trying to force an AI solution into something that either does not need it or will seem forced, and try to lean instead towards more intuitive use cases and solutions first. However, said that, don't give up early. If a problem looks like a bad fit or too hard to solve, try analyzing it. If only a part of it could be enhanced by AI in a way that could have an impact on the overall process, or if it could be broken down into chunks that could be tackled by different components. Remember, again, AI can be a part of a larger solution, and a more mundane data methodology like an ETL process or classic predictive analytics being the answer isn't necessarily a bad outcome. Many times these are even cheaper than leveraging AI models inefficiently, and these are still techniques and methodologies that may arise during these conversations. Naturally, as a second point, keep organizational goals in mind and always frame solutions by stating the business problem you're looking to solve and choose the right language for your audience. Don't go talking too technically to executives and the other way around, which is just common sense for software engineers, right? When presenting a plan, avoid making it sound like a promise or an expectation that a single prompt is going to solve the problem we're tackling, and try to look beyond the AI component and into the infrastructure that's going to surround it. Especially in a software development context, when we're talking to clients who are accustomed to those sorts of projects, they're going to be used to reading flowcharts, architectural diagrams, having components described in terms of inputs and outputs. If you have that experience, leverage that and consider the ways in which these interactions will occur and be controlled and document it as part of a proposal. It's much easier to test and troubleshoot, again, an AI component that does simple classifications or returns a score of some kind when it is part of a pipeline or an orchestration than it is to begin to understand how a more complex AI component powered by a much more specific prompt may arrive at a given conclusion or plan of action. So leverage the technical and domain expertise you have access to and focus on demonstrating value in order to build the conditions for longer, more complex engagements. Speaking about working your way up from a proof of concept to a full implementation, here's a rough outline of a three-step methodology for implementing AI solutions that actually maps well to the sorts of services that we have been pushing for on Gap. The strategy emphasizes mitigating risk by starting small and progressively building upon successes. So in the first phase, we focus on creating a minimal viable product or a proof of concept that is well scoped. This involves leveraging existing examples and discrete components to demonstrate the AI's capabilities and its potential value, which is often crucial for securing initial buy-in from stakeholders and can be very time sensitive. The second phase, which is sort of a pilot, is going to build upon the proof of concept by specializing the solution. So this means integrating client-specific data and requirements, developing mechanisms for introspection and metrics collection, and refining component-level integration. This goal here is to demonstrate tangible value to key stakeholders within a more controlled yet realistic environment. This phase validates the AI solution's effectiveness with real-world data and processes before a broader rollout. Finally, we can look at the scale phase, which involves fully aligning the AI solution with the organization's existing infrastructure. This stage includes establishing robust processes and data governance frameworks to ensure the longevity, robustness, and sustained impact of the AI implementation. By following this approach, organizations can systematically de-risk their AI initiatives, start building confidence in the technology, start getting that buy-in that is so valuable to sustain the long processes that many data projects are subject to, and achieve lasting value that actually gets used and contributes somehow to the company. Finally, I want to tackle some concerns that I've seen crop up when discussing potential AI solutions. The first one of these is predictably cost. And this can be intimidating. This can be an intimidating aspect of tackling an AI solution if you use big enterprise packages of AI services and tools as a barometer. There's lots of big marketed services out there who can seem very expensive. However, I think this is where scoping correctly and starting small can really help. There are many solutions to integrate AI into a solution or process beyond just using a huge proprietary model. So depending on the complexity of the work, you may be able to host a model yourself on a cloud provider or even on premises. The more laser targeted the use for a model or the more specific its use is, the more it's going to drive costs down for both the model itself and the testing and troubleshooting associated with it, as we have already discussed. Data privacy is, of course, also a big one. There's a couple ways to tackle this, but what I would primarily say is we already have dealt as a company with data privacy concerns in the past, and AI tools really are no different. We build with privacy first principles, and we already have vetting processes in place to ensure that the tools we use, both in our internal processes as well as our technical implementations, comply with privacy requirements. I would say this is also a matter of culture. As I briefly mentioned before, there are precautions to be taken when dealing with AI tools, such as publicly hosted chatbots, which may use the data they get to recalibrate and train, which makes it necessary to develop an organizational awareness of good practices around interacting with these tools. When it comes to AI risks and harms, such as models potentially falling for biases, this is once again, I think, an area where delimiting AI component scope can be helpful, as setting boundaries clearly about how much they can affect and how much they can alter makes it easier to identify potential risks, even at the very beginning of the planning stages. So this makes designing ways to detect, measure, and counteract these occurrences very easy and turns it into a built-in part of the solution design. This aspect is all about identifying potential pitfalls early on, understanding how not only the model but the solution overall can be harmful if mismanaged, and designing supervision, transparency, and accountability as an integral part of the solution. We've already spoken about handling complexity a lot, so I'll just repeat that if you're designing pipelines and software solutions using good practices and design patterns in general, instead of promising an AI black box, it's going to immediately become more parsable to a client and team than if it were a vague AI black box. So let's move on to the conclusions with some key takeaways. So, what to remember? AI success is always going to start with a solid data foundation, but don't let that be an obstacle towards innovation. If you have good momentum, if you have good ideas, if you had a good use case that seems to be easily implementable, uh, run with it instead of waiting for your governance policies or your robust data infrastructure to be in place. There are many ways where you can start acting and integrating AI into your company without having to wait. Gen AI is a very useful tool, evidently extremely flexible, but that doesn't mean throwing away the rest of your toolbox. Good software practices and design patterns still drive success. And the more that you can reduce AI's scope to a single component within a pipeline, the more it's going to become understandable for everyone and be more testable and easier to manage. Be a proactive consultant, not just a technologist, which is something that we, again, are already trained to do. We have to orient discovery towards solving business problems, not just implementing technology for its own sake. And start thinking about smaller solutions, proving value, and then from those successes, being able to scale. You have to use product thinking to scope proof of concepts and get that valuable buy-in from clients. That's it for the presentation. So thank you very much for joining. And if there are any questions, I am happy to take them now. You are on mute, Camilo.
Yeah, I was just saying, guys, that if you have questions and you don't want to leave them at the chat, you can also raise your hand and I'll make sure to allow you to talk so you can ask directly to Sergio. And while you think about your questions, we have a very important question for all of you, which is how did you like the talk? I just shared a feedback form in the chat. So please make sure to fill it out because that helps us a lot to improve and to keep your comments in mind when making a future event. So you can go there and remember that this is the fifth, if I'm not mistaken. One, two, three, four, five, sixth. Sorry, sixth talk in the drop down list. So make sure to select that when you give your answers. And well, again, guys, if there's any questions, please leave them in the Q&A section or raise your hand and I'll be happy to allow you to talk. Okay, we have we have one from Sylvia. Sylvia, you can talk now.
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yes.
Thank you, Sergio, for your time. Quick question. Since when you are doing this work, normally you will be faced with different clients on different industries. What will be your recommendation on preparation in advance, depending on the industry, especially if you don't know the details of each vertical of the clients? So, what would be your recommendation on preparation in advance of a discovery, like the ones that you are performing for that industry? How deep you should go in there or on preparing for one of these sessions?
I think that's a great question. So I've had the privilege to usually when having these opportunities to talk to clients that I haven't interacted before, of talking with gapsters who are on that client, who are actively working on that client beforehand, and they are the ones who I meet with to fill out that template that I showed before, and that helps me guide the conversation a lot because that's where we go deep into what it is that the client does, what it is that their customers are interested in doing, and what are the, again, actions that they perform that we could have some impact on. I think having visibility over their data even if it's only the visibility that Gap has, because many times clients that we interact with are not letting us see the entirety of their data infrastructure, but only maybe certain parts of an API or certain parts of their database. I think even that, having just a glimpse of what it is that they value in terms of data storage and in terms of the data that they handle, and what that operational and analytical data looks like, is going to be a big driver for what direction to choose to take the conversation on. So many of these conversations have resulted in having personal meetings with client stakeholders, in which, again, I'm able to drive that conversation thanks to previous discussions that I've had with Gap. And many conversations turn into just documents that hold proposals that the respective team is responsible for sending over to the client and seeing if they are interested in any of the use cases that we identified. And we've had a lot of success. And I think a big driver of that is, again, understanding the data that they value. It's kind of like rummaging through their shelves or rummaging through the stuff they keep in the kitchen, right? Because that gives you a really good clue of what it is they are actually interested in. If they hold their customer data in a high value, then that probably means that we want to propose something having to do with their customer data. If inventory is not as important to them, then maybe that's not something that they would be interested actively in pursuing. Or if there is an apparent pain point that the team has identified around a specific either action that they take or verb that they are often performing or a data set, then that's another good place to start a conversation.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Sylvia, for the question as well. Are there any other questions, guys? Maybe in the chat, you can raise your hands. Okay, Sergio, I'm pretty sure that's it then. Maybe if you have any other question that it doesn't pop out in your mind right now, but later on, you can contact me and I'll make sure to refer that question to Sergio to see if there's anything you want to clarify. And
Perfect.
And also I don't know if you saw that, Sergio, but there were a lot of applauses and celebration when you finished. So that means it's also very clear, and maybe that's why people are not asking questions at the moment.
Certainly hope so. Thank you so
Yeah.
much for attending.
Yes, guys, thank you for attending and thank you for being here in the Elevate 2025 event. We have upcoming events for the people that are inside of Gap, and this is our last week. So I'll be very happy to see you in our talks tomorrow and also this Thursday. Again, thank you so much, Sergio, as well, for sharing all your knowledge with us, and see you in the next one.
Thank you. Bye.